Welcome back, and we're still talking the economy, and the next YouTube question is for Helen Clark, and it's on affordable housing.
What does the government propose to do to make housing more affordable for first home buyers? Would there be cheaper interest loans like the 5% Housing Corporation loans of yesteryear to attract young voters like myself?
I think there's three issues here. Firstly, KiwiSaver under the Labor plan enables young people to build up a substantial deposit. So if we took a young couple on the average couples or household income, which is about $75,000, so they're earning roughly $37,500 each, then after 5 years in KiwiSaver, they'd have a deposit of $35,000, which is quite a significant amount of saving, which they could put into their deposit. Now, as well as that, we've had running for a little while the Welcome Home scheme, which has been particularly helpful to young people buying the starter home in the regional cities, but the shared equity scheme is going to be more helpful in the more expensive property markets, and I do have actually tomorrow some more policy to announce around housing.
There's a lot of people think back to the days of the old Housing Corp loans where they got an affordable interest rate. Is there any going back to that?
Well, when I was Minister of Housing quite a lot of years ago, we did have a substantial portfolio for mortgages, and one of the saddest things in my life was seeing an incoming national government sell the whole lot of it to Faye Richwhite, and we all know what happened to them. So going back to concessional interest rates I don't think would be on, but I think through shared equity, through underwrites to the mortgages like the Welcome Home scheme, we can find ways to help, and certainly KiwiSaver with the Labor scheme, the 4% employee contribution, the 4% employer contribution, plus the $20 tax credit, that really does help people get the money together for a deposit.
Mark, look, firstly under our KiwiSaver scheme, New Zealanders can continue to pay in 4% if they want to. Yes, that $20 tax credit's there. Yes, the 2%'s there, and the 4% Helen's talking about doesn't come until 2011 anyway. Secondly, if you ask the question why New Zealanders have found it very hard to buy a house, a couple of reasons. Firstly, our planning legislation doesn't work well. The Resource Management Act has meant that it's much more expensive for builders and those who subdivide land to get that out of the ground, get those subdivisions going. So that's added a lot to the cost. In 2004, I think it was, the Building Act was changed in New Zealand. That added an awful lot of bureaucracy and costs to the system. Now the government's arguing that they should change it 4 years on, very late. The other point, of course, is this. For the ability for someone to buy a home, and I fully support home ownership. New Zealand is a property-owning democracy in my view. It's a wonderful thing. But the real point here is you've got to have lower interest rates to be able to meet your mortgage and higher after-tax incomes to actually pay it. Interest rates doubled under a Labor government. That made it more difficult for young homeowners than anything else to get into that property market, and as I say, that failure to reform. We'll also have a gateway program, and the way that gateway program will work is you'll be able to go along, you'll have to pay for the house, but the section over a 10-year period will be owned by the state, and you can buy that any time within that 10-year period. For somewhere like Hobsonville in my electorate, I don't support state housing for Helen says on that, but I do support gateway homes where young Aucklanders can go out there and get their first home, buy their section over 10 years. I think it's a good plan.
Well, actually, John, for a lot of people, their first real home is the support that a family in adversity does get from Housing New Zealand, a state house. And you've gone out and campaigned against people getting that chance, which you once you had yourself in a state home. But if we can come to affordable housing, we have a number of changes underway, which of course do make the Building Act a little more friendly to the low-cost home. Shane Jones has been looking at plans where we get a very simple design which can be built at a low price. A lot of things happening here. I will have more to say tomorrow, but I do think shared equity, where the Housing New Zealand takes a share in the house until such time as our young couple can buy out that share. That's going to be very, very important in getting the economics of home ownership better for a lot of
Mark,
people.
If shared equity was such a great idea, they wouldn't have announced it half a dozen times and finally got around to it. And this is the other promise I'll make to New Zealanders. When they get their first home, their existing home, or any other home, I won't be telling them what their shower nozzle is like. I won't tell them what light bulb they have to screw in. We'll be making housing affordable to New Zealanders.
Let's just
with
deal
lower
with that
interest
one
rates.
right there.
Right
there,
Helen,
John, because
your nanny
I
state
can
is
tell
telling
you,
people how much water can come through the shower, and I say
that
to New
there
Zealanders,
is no
that
more
is just a
chance
step of government
of a
way
Labor
too far
government.
telling New Zealanders
There
what
is
to
no
do.
more
We won't be
chance
telling
of a
them how
Labor
much water
government
comes in the
telling
shower.
people how much water
Well,
comes
Shane
through
Jones
the
was
shower
apologising
than
in Close Up
flying
last
to
night.
the moon.
We
right?
heard
So let's
Shane
take
Jones
that
came
clear.
here.
Shane
You
Jones,
and your
Shane
party,
Jones was on the lunar launching pad yesterday
sorry,
on Close
John.
Up, telling
I'm
New
sorry,
Zealanders
John.
that actually we might have got that bit wrong about
mislead people.
I'm not misleading
I am
anyone. I've
telling
seen it on the
you.
TV
Sorry,
channel.
just want to hear Helen
used
Clark's
to-
answer
I
to
am
this.
telling
under your
you,
thing.
John, you might be used to shouting people down at home, you're not shouting me
Well,
down.
shout anyway.
Okay,
What
that's
I am
very-
saying
have a great
is there
time.
is no more chance of people being told how much water can go through their shower a minute under a Labor government
Well,
than
that's
of
what they were
flying
trying
to
to do
the
until
moon.
they got found
That
out.
will not happen.
That's what they were trying to do.
I want to
until
bring
they
Guy
got found
Espino back in here again.
Thanks, Mark. Well, we hear a lot from politicians about wealth and about poverty. I'd like to ask both leaders, starting with the Prime Minister, how do you define, in monetary terms if you can, what it is to be rich and what it is to be poor?
Well, when we looked at working for families and where we wanted to be really making a difference, the issue was looking at families who were under 60% of the median income. And we were able to say with working for families that we've been able to lift 130,000 children in our country out of poverty. And that puts our poverty levels for children on a par with those of the Netherlands. We think of the Netherlands as being an affluent country, so to be considered on a par with them, I think, is a very considerable achievement.
But rich, what would you put, what sort of income would someone be on for you to consider them rich, Helen Clark?
Well, everything's relative, isn't it? We know what the average wage is, which is around 45,700. We know that a lot of our teachers now are on incomes that go in the 65, 70, 75,000 and up bracket, but those people won't be feeling wealthy at all. They'll be feeling like with, you know, all the costs of living that they're probably on a pretty modest wage. So,
Do you feel rich?
well, I believe that by the standards of most people, of course, I'm exceptionally well paid. I do carry a lot of responsibility, but believe me, I don't do the job for the money.
But do you feel rich?
Well, I never think about it. I actually don't focus on money at all. I live in my own little house close to Eden Park. That's where I spend the majority of my time, and I like to live a lifestyle which is in keeping with what I could live whatever I was doing.
John Key, what do you define as rich and poor?
Well, I think rich is when you're in a position where you're not fearful of the next bill that comes along. You're not worried about the car breaking down. You're not worried about the fact that you can't meet your credit card or you can't pay your electricity bill. Rich is where you have the choice to be able to do some things in your life, maybe help out a family member. I've been in a fortunate position in my life in one sense that I've had a successful business career. And yes, I have made money, and I can tell you because I also know the other side of being poor. I was brought up by an estate house by a solo mother, so I've had both extremes of that. And I can tell you, there's a lot of New Zealanders out there who grew up and are growing up and are living in the conditions that I grew up in, and their life is really hard. It actually hurts for them when they can't do the things they want to do for their children. I want to actually run New Zealand and be Prime Minister of New Zealand under the politics of aspiration. I want more New Zealanders to move from poverty to wealth, and actually a lot of that is getting people off welfare, because we all know actually in this country an enormous number of children are growing up in poverty, and in a large case they're growing up in welfare.
Okay, now there are a lot of people. I want to put this quick.
I want to come to
this
that.
comes into this.
Because under Labor, of course, more than 100,000 people, fewer, are on social security benefits. We have been very successful in getting people back to work. There's 350,000 more people
And
in work
successful
today
getting them into the
than there
social
were
invalid's
in
benefit,
1999.
I think let's go down.
That's the key
that
to it.
many
That is the
successful
key
moving them to
to
the
it.
Many New
Sickness
Zealanders today are
invalid's, but-
finding things are tough. And this question, John Key, is for you.
Hi, my name is Carmen McDougall. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Pukekohe. My family and I would like to know how you and your party plan to help low and middle income earners and their families through the forecasted economic depression.
Well, firstly, Carmi's right to recognise that we're going into a difficult time that's going to require good economic leadership. And I think in the last 9 years, we've had a tremendous opportunity to make a step change for New Zealand, and the government's failed. When we opened those books, a decade of deficits. New Zealand going backwards relative to countries like Australia, going down the OECD rankings at 22nd, not going up. So for those lower middle income families, a number of things. Firstly, we're introducing a tax cut which is called the Independent Earners Rebate. They'll get $15 a week, $10 in the first year in 09.
Not the
$5 a year after that. Well, they're the hundreds
Not
of thousands of New Zealanders actually, Helen, that for 9 years
was
you
about
could have
our
cut their
families,
taxes.
and we have given working for families
well, we are also
70% of our families.
Working for families, but on top of that, we're actually changing taxes. I'll give you one good example of that. Take someone on 40,000 when working for families first came in. Every extra dollar they earned, maybe they went out, did a little bit of overtime, something like that, a secondary job, whatever it might be, 2/3 of those dollars were taken off them. Under our Working for Families program, they get to keep 2/3 of the dollars if they're on $40,000. We're putting real incentives for New Zealanders to be able to get ahead under their own steam, and I support that.
Helen Clark?
I set out on Sunday what we're prepared to do to bring forward spending on infrastructure to ensure that we do have job-rich activity going on in the economy if conditions don't pick up from where they are. I think it is going to take a little time to assess just how much fallout there is from this latest extraordinary few weeks of international financial turbulence, but we have to be prepared. I've announced also significant new investments in skills, including in retraining allowances, saying that anyone who's been in the workforce for 5 years and is made redundant will be able to have a year of support equivalent to student allowance to go back into a quality course for retraining. So we're very much focused on how we can ensure that the economy keeps moving forward and we keep investing at this critical time. The last thing you want is National Party style politics of cutting back on spending and going into some kind of slump like the 1930s.
Sorry, John, we're going to discuss later who is best in terms of leading the country through this, but after the break, if we survive the financial crisis, how do we ensure the planet survives?